101, this is going to be the second piece to our Premier Lawn Seminar series that we started about a month ago. I see some familiar faces from that seminar, and we're going to just keep doing these, whether or not we stay with the 101 topic or if you guys have some specific ones we want to do. We just want to get people together and talk about some specific topics in yard, more so than the depth that we can get into when we're just talking in the showroom with you or trying to educate you there. So what we're going to talk about tonight, I really just want to kind of go over some background and terminology. What's a weed? Why is it important that we should know what they are? And then the control methods, the part that you all will be interested in. As far as the cultural control, we'll talk a little bit about just the basic care of the lawn, things that your lawn likes versus things that it doesn't like. Mechanical control and chemical control will probably be a large portion of what we'll discuss tonight, because I think that's the one that people have the most confusion with or have a lot of questions with. It's a little bit more difficult to understand. So we'll go over some herbicide basics and some pictures of common weeds, and we'll just kind of group them together. So rather than say weed X, this is how you control it, and then go to the same one and it happens to be the same thing, and we just keep having the same control method, we'll get a group of them together and then talk about how to control that group. So we'll get that going. So again, first, what is a weed? A weed is just a plant out of place. So it may be useful, it may be beautiful, it may be medicinal, but if it's not where you want it, it's a weed. So if you don't want a flower in the middle of your yard, that's a weed there. But if you do want it in your bed, that's a plant that you like. So if it's out of place, we're going to call that a weed. So for the purposes of this, it's anything you don't want, where you don't want it, we'll call it a weed. So what is a noxious weed? Some people will throw that term around, noxious or obnoxious or something like that. But really all that means is that's just designated by a local government to be so invasive that by law, you have to control it if it's on your land. So there's only one that really falls into the yard category, which we'll discuss. But some people will confuse that. But if you do happen to have that one, there's some availability with the local government that will actually help you out in controlling that one. And then there's going to be three basic classifications of weeds, and this will help determine our susceptibility for when we go to do our spraying. So broadleaves, grasses, and then other, and for our purposes, other means sedges, which aren't really broadleaves, aren't really grasses. So they're going to fit into three basic life cycles, and these life cycles help determine the most effective way to control the weed. Okay, so we may treat an annual plant that does not live more than a year different than we do a biennial plant that lives for 2 years, or a perennial plant that's going to be there the whole time until you choose to do something about it. So the life cycle can aid you in the type of control that you use. And for those of you who are here at the last seminar, we talked kind of in depth with that annual grass life cycle and how that went. And we'll touch on that a little bit here, so this will be some review from last time. Okay, so we look at these two weeds and we go, it's the same thing. I've got that in my yard, I don't want it in my yard. The difference is the weed identification is key to being able to control either one of these effectively. So we may go in and see this one in our yard down here, this orchard grass, and say, oh, well, my crabgrass preventer will get that. But we don't know that that's a perennial grass. That crabgrass preventer will do nothing for you. Where this crabgrass plant, that'll do a great job for you. And so even though they look similar, they respond to treatment differently. So we don't want to have this problem, go spend a whole bunch of money on this problem, thinking that it's this problem, and then you end up having to do it again or you get frustrated. So proper weed ID does save you time, save you money, and it gets it done right the first time. So I do encourage you to spend a little bit of time trying to identify it. If you're like Chad, there's no way I'm going to ID these things, this is ridiculous. Bring it in, I'd be happy to identify it for you, and we can get you on the right method of control, so that way we're at a good starting point. So kind of this is what's bugging me, here you go Chad, tell me what to do, we do that for you. If you want a little help, I think I showed this slide last time, but this Weeds in the Vertical in the Quick Lane is an excellent book to assist you in finding that. And really when we ID plants, our goal is to find out what makes the plant unique. What is it about that plant that's different than any other plant that helps you pick it out. And then is it a broadleaf or a grass? For our purposes, that's going to be am I going to be able to selectively control it, or am I going to kill everything if I go after it? So that's also important to know. And then, does it have a season or a time? That's keying more towards that annual versus perennial life cycle. Is it there all the time, or do I just see it in the spring, or do I just see it in the fall? And then the leaves can also be important in their arrangement and figuring out what they are. So again, helpful book if you need it. But the three basic methods when we've ID'd weed is, well, how do we get rid of it, okay? So the very classic method of mechanical control. That is going out, physically removing it, digging it out, growing it up. We've all done that probably once or twice, pull weeds in the garden, or grandma had you clean up this or that in the flower beds. That's certainly an acceptable method, except for it is very labor intensive, as we all know. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is change the way that you take care of your yard. So by using a different method to take care of your yard, you're favoring your yard and not the weeds, so you have less weeds. And that's a simple way and some things that affect that are your mowing height and frequency. Fertilizer, do you fertilize or not? How much water do you put on it and the way you water? Shade, that's also another consideration to take in there. If you can also greatly affect, how many weeds you have based on how good you are at your cultural control method, at your cultural control level, or how good are you at taking care of your yard. And then the last one is chemical control. So, and in chemicals, we can either selectively control it, meaning you're going to kill their target weed, but not your yard. Non-selective means you're killing everything you're spraying. You can do it post-emergent, which means I see the weed and I'm going to kill it. Or you can do it pre-emergent. Before I have any problems, I'm going to just make sure I don't. So those are the different methods of chemical control, and we'll get into them a little bit more. But let's start with the basics of what I call turf grass cultivation. So we look at these yards and we say, man, that's what I want. I want a nice tall fescue yard that's well maintained and I don't have any weeds or that sort of thing in there. And so we're going to go over some things that will help you there, because I still will hammer on this that the best defense against weeds is a healthy stand of turf. So if you have a healthy stand of turf, it's very difficult to get weeds there. And I know a lot of you want to go and blame your neighbor across the road or blame that sort of thing there, but there are so many seeds in your yard right now that just are looking for an opportunity to germinate. Whether he sends you 160,000 or you deal with the million or so that are already there, you still need to consider that the best defense is a healthy stand of turf. So some basic tips. Our tall fescue yards like to be mowed at about 3 to 4.5 inches. Now for a lot of you, you'll say, is that high or low, or it kind of depends on your perspective. But a lot of people, if you consider push mowers, very rarely go above 3 inches. You really got to find, a push mower that's for our area and that can really jack the height up in order to do that. And make sure that you're measuring that height from the mower blade to the concrete. Don't rely on any setting that the manufacturer gives you or any judgment. They're notoriously off. So make sure that you're measuring that. Another good way to do it is, if I take my hand and I go ahead and shove it down into the yard, I really want that grass to kind of come up about my knuckles. So if I've got it coming up there, I know that height is right for tall fescue. And another tip when you're mowing is try not to remove more than 1/3 of the total height at any one time. Okay, and you say, what that means is I don't want you to let it grow up to 6 inches and then mow it down to 3 inches. That's removing half of the plant. And that is stressful for the plant. That can shock the plant. That can give the weed an opportunity to get up and get in between. So that's another way to help reduce that stress. Keep your high nitrogen in the fall. A lot of you right now get excited in the spring, so we want to go, well, I'm going to go dump a bunch of nitrogen on now, but really now is not the time. The fall fertilization will help that density of the grass without the extra growth, store food, and shade out weeds. So next year you don't have a problem. So what you do in the fall really determines how your yard performs this spring. And so you'll notice a lot of you can drive down the block right now, and the guy who does nothing, his yard is just as green as yours. Okay? And you sit here and go, well, how is that? It's because the preparation that you do in the fall, really, you're going to have the same look in the spring regardless. So really, putting more nitrogen into the situation isn't going to improve how your yard looks in the spring. They're all going to look pretty good in the spring. It's what you do in the off time that will help you in the summer when the stress comes on later on. So again, high nitrogen in the fall. And then take advantage of tall fescue's drought tolerance. Okay, tall fescue tolerates drought by dormancy. So if you never allow it to go dormant, you are not taking advantage of its drought tolerance. So what that means is, when we get through June and we're starting into July, consider letting it go down and letting it kind of have a rest, if you will, and let it save those roots going in for about a month and a half. You can do about 6 weeks of dormancy, and then when you come into that August, or excuse me, that's going to be August 15th or so, somewhere around in there. Then you can put the water back to it and wake it up out of dormancy, and you're sitting there with a lot more reserve than you would have had if you just pushed it through the whole summer. Because once it gets above 86 degrees as your average temperature, the yard can't make any food. It's just going to be completely burning its reserves, and it's going to go downhill quickly. And so there's no sense in really trying to push it through that time if you're really concerned about the long-term health. When you do water deep and infrequently. So that means I don't want you out there every day at 6:30 watering it for 20 minutes and walking away type thing. I'd rather see, on a, let's just use your old rainbow sprinklers, those kind that go back and forth. I'd rather see you run that for an hour and a half once a week than 20 minutes each day, if that makes sense. And what that does is that forces the root system to get deeper and be a more robust root system, and not a really shallow, droughty root system. And that's what will allow you to have a yard that continues to look like that even when times get hard, because that roots have been forced to get down. Now when you go into that dormancy period, it doesn't mean don't water. It means if you don't receive any rainfall for 2 weeks and you've been over 86 degrees, then water a 1/4 inch, but no more than that. Just keep the crown alive and keep it alive, but don't break dormancy, don't wake it up out of dormancy. And so that's a way you can kind of cheat the hot summertime and really work on your cultivation. And then overseed every 3 to 5 years. That's typically the lifespan of a tall fescue plant, and that is the weakness of a tall fescue plant. Most other grasses either spread through rhizomes, or they spread through stolons, or they have some other means of reproducing themselves vegetatively. Tall fescue is a bunch type grass, and it does not really do a successful job at reproducing vegetatively. So what that means is, since we're never letting it go to seed, we're going to mow it, the whole time. And even if you did let it go to seed, it's not a good idea for those of you who think, oh, well, I'll just let it go to seed. No. What ends up happening is you end up choking off half of your yard, if you do it that way. But that every 3 to 5 years continually refreshes it with new plants. It keeps that density up and keeps weeds out. So that's why you would overseed every 3 to 5 years. Now, it may not be through any fault of your own, but many of you may have a yard that looks something like this right now. And when we're talking about those, the contrast from that last yard, you can selectively see these little bunches sitting out here. You see the little clumps of your fescue as you look through there? And notice what's in those gaps. The weeds are seeking the gaps where your yard is not. And so that's why that turf density makes a big difference when you go in. Okay, so you're here. We've all wished we could have seeded. We all wish we had a denser yard. But now we want to do something about this, that unsightly look. And herbicides are a great tool that we can use to do that. I still recommend we go ahead and ID. Some of those you might see a little henbit here. These are some dandelions right along through here. So you want to ID the weeds to control, and then when you use your herbicides, make sure you're reading the label to find the proper amount you want to put down. And it also will tell you what kind of protective equipment you may need. So a lot of you may say, oh, I don't need anything, I'm just going to go spray, but that label may say, hey, you need a pair of these gloves, hey, you need a long sleeve shirt, hey, you need shoes plus socks. And this man right here will tell you all about that because he has to wear protective equipment every day. But really that, and one thing people forget, the most dangerous time when you're mixing chemicals is when? It's when you're mixing, it's not when you're applying. So really pay attention to that when you're mixing, more so than when you're going out and applying, because just one little drop's equivalent to 10,000 drops of the mixed solution. So just, use your best judgment on that and remember to follow those. And then know your equipment. If you know your equipment and what it sprays, it makes this whole job a lot easier. Understanding how you work with your sprayer takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And for those of you who don't know how much area you have, there's this great website called findmylotsize.com, and we can show you an example of that when we're all done. But really, you go in here, you type in your address, and you just plot right around a satellite photo of your yard, and it tells you the square footage. It is a really cool deal, and it is pretty darn accurate. I went out and did it on my personal yard to see what it did, and it came back spot on. So that's a really cool tool for any of you guys wanting to know, hey, how much is the side of my yard or the back of my yard? Findmylotsize.com. So, on the label, it may say something like, I need to apply 1.5 ounces per 1,000 or something like that. We need to be thinking about the amount of chemical going over an area, not how much chemical goes in a gallon of water, because everybody applies it differently and it depends on your equipment. So really be thinking in applying based on a per 1,000 basis, not on a, or a per acre basis, not on a ounce per gallon basis. I know that's the simple way to do it, and a lot of times we'll say, you know, how many ounces per gallon or that sort of thing, and we can give you a rough idea, but to be honest with you, we don't know. And that can grossly under-apply or grossly over-apply the herbicide, and you're either wasting money one way or another. You know, you're either having to go back and retreat, or you just put 10 times what you should have done. And make sure that we're spraying weeds when they're actively growing, okay? Right now is a great time to spray your weeds. That's why we time this presentation like this, because they're growing fast and everything's going. The herbicides work very well during this time frame. So make sure that they're actively growing. You know, in the middle of the summer, when you got an old dead weed that's super mature and already flowered and isn't going to go anywhere, it doesn't matter what you spray on it, nothing's going to happen. It's already finished, it's already done, and it's not taking in any herbicide at that point. And then know your injury symptoms. So if I sprayed with a 2,4-D based chemical, well, what is it supposed to look like after a few days? Is it working? Is it not working? You know, a little understanding of what it is, and that's something we'll talk about. And the way you would look that up or decide that would be called the herbicide's mode of action. So if you say Roundup, what's its mode of action? It'll tell you how it works, and that's how I like to understand herbicides, so I know what to expect. I need to know if I'm going to see something tomorrow or if I'm going to see something in 2 weeks. You know, so you're not getting anxious or wanting to reapply when you don't need to. So let's use an example here. So if we have some white clover, and we went out there and you brought this to me and I said, oh yeah, we got some white clover, and I need to spray it in my yard. And this Triamec 899, we read the label, it says apply 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces per 1,000 square foot. Okay, well how much water do we need to get that done? Anybody know? Does it matter?
I think so.
It doesn't matter, actually. I mean, I don't care if you use 10 gallons or 15 gallons or 1 gallon. It's whatever you want to mix it with and whatever your equipment does. The water is simply the carrier for the herbicide. So all I care about is that 1.5 ounces of product got over that area. It doesn't matter if you took 1 gallon to get it done, 1/3 of a gallon to get it done, 2 gallons to get it done. And that's pretty common, by the way, from anywhere from 1/3 of an ounce up to 2 ounces per gallon. You know, a commercial guy, when he goes out, he's going to be using it at a 2 gallon per 1,000 rates, pretty common. Because they're dissolving or using fertilizers with it, they need more water to dissolve the fertilizers. For us, maybe using a little backpack or something like that, we may be only putting 1/3 of an ounce down per gallon, or per 1,000. So how would I find out? The easiest place, or easiest way to do it's on your driveway. You've got a great little section where you can get, you know, maybe a 10-foot by 100-foot section. That would be 1,000 square feet, right? And all you do is you sit there with a little stopwatch and you start spraying. And you just spray till you cover it. And when you're done, shut it off. Okay? If that took you 30 seconds to spray, repeat the process in a container that has measurements on it. So if you've got a little quart jar or something like that, or a half-gallon jug or a milk jug, spray for that amount of time, and then you have your volume. So that's your volume over 1,000 square feet. Now you know how much chemical to put. And so that's how you get to where you need. So in this case, if I sprayed for 30 seconds and I came up with 64 ounces, which is a 1/2 gallon, that means I'm spraying a 1/2 gallon per 1,000 when I spray. So all I need to do is put an ounce to an ounce and a half in my half gallon, and that's how you know that you're spraying at the right rate. And so it doesn't take very long just to touch up and see how you do it, and everybody's going to be different. Some of you are going to whisk right on by, and some of you are going to sit there and paint it, make sure every little inch is covered, and that really accounts for that. So how much Trimec do you use? It's an ounce and a half. It doesn't. How much water depends on how you apply it, especially in this spot spray type thing. So this is another example. Even if you measure a gallon, it's still an ounce and a half. It doesn't matter which way you do it. Okay, so now that I've sprayed it, what's it supposed to look like? So if I use that example, and I'm spraying an ounce of triplet per half gallon, that's the same as saying I'm putting 2 ounces in a gallon of water, right? And that's actually a pretty common rate that a lot of people will notice and use, is that 2 ounces per gallon for our commercial strength triplet type thing. But what you'll notice is that Trimec uses 3 growth regulators to cause damage, and what that means is they use these things called auxin mimics. Auxins are what cause the plant to grow. If you think about like sunflowers, right? Okay, a sunflower goes up and it starts in the morning and it follows the sun here, and you'll see that sunflower moves over here. The hormone that controls that is auxin. So in the sunlight, it's broken down and not available. In the shade, it's not. So it's growing towards the light all the time because the shaded side grows towards the sun. Same sort of thing happens, but on a mass, uncontrollable scale. And that's how these herbicides are working. So really, you're going to see this twistedness, this twirliness, all this thing. Now the weed doesn't necessarily go away, but it's not healthy. It's on its way out. It's what you did worked, okay? It's just taking a little time to finish it out. So when you see this, don't say, oh man, just gotta go get it again. Oh, gotta go get it again. Or some people will even tell me, man, that stuff you sold me, it didn't help at all. It made them grow. And it does. It makes them grow, So in the short term, you'll see this massive amount of growth that's associated with it. But this cupped leaves, twisted growth, swollen or distorted stems, and rapid growth is how you know that what you sprayed, as far as triplet or Trimec or whatever you want to use of the 3 ways that we've got, we do that. Okay, so this is a question I get a lot. Well, Chad, what about a weed and feed? I love that, man. It's a granular product. I just go out and I'm fertilizing and doing that at the same time. You're lured in by the convenience of the product. All of the stuff that we do in the turf industry follows agriculture. I've never ever seen a combo app in agriculture at all. They're so ineffective, they can't tolerate it in the ag industry. So really, a granular post-emergent is problematic. You're asking a foliar absorbed and shoot absorbed product that's in a granular form to stick to or hit or get into leaf tissue and stem tissue. But it's granular and it falls right to the soil surface. So it's very tough to get it to stick there, and it's just a really tough thing to ask of a product to get in the right place. If it's not in the right place, it's not going to work. I would expect less than 60% control with most post-emergent granular products. Now pre-emergent, they do pretty well because you're treating the soil. The target's the soil, not the tissue and the leaves that are already there. And so just be careful when you get these, they will not work at all if dicamba is not a part of that. So, when you look on the label, there may be a big, huge chemical name, but part of it will say dicamba. It's really uncommon to not see that. But that is the only one that's a root absorbed of the 3 that they add. And that's the only way that those are even remotely effective. But you're still asking one granular to get absorbed into the root system to do all the work, where most of the time when you spray, you're getting all 3 working together in concert with each other. And so just understand that there still is a place for this. If I don't have a sprayer and my yard's just full of dandelions and I want to go knock out 60% of them and follow up, just as long as you understand that's a reasonable goal with the product, go for it. Just understand that you should expect 6 and 10 of those guys, not more like 98 or so like you would see with your sprays. So that's kind of the difference. There's about a 30% difference between the two methods. So when do you not care what it is? Well, I've harped on weed ID. If you're in a non-selective situation, you probably don't care what it is that's in your sidewalk or what it is that's over there. So I'll probably just let you go. You don't necessarily have to ID what's in your sidewalk. So in a non-selective situation, the weed ID is not so important. So we may see a label for Roundup that says 3 ounces per 1,000, and based on our last calibration, if we were doing a ½ gallon per 1,000, you're going to put 6 ounces per gallon of Roundup, and that would be the labeled rate for that. So what's interesting about Roundup is it does not work the same way that your auxin mimics work, or your 2,4-Ds, MCPAs and dicambas. Those sorts of things work differently. So your symptoms a little different. So these, what they call amino acid synthesis inhibitors, big long word, all it means is it tells the plant, you don't have to produce this amino acid. You're full. And it just keeps telling it that it's full. And it keeps telling it it's full, and the plant in the meantime is just running out of it. And it's key for its processes, key for it to survive. So it thinks everything's fine till it's not, and the plant just dies. And so you see the plant perfectly healthy looking, but starting to yellow, starting to get chlorotic, starting to go downhill, but no twisting, no growing. It just sort of sits there, and then it'll turn yellow and then die.
You know which amino acids?
Not right offhand. I believe one of them's tryptophan, actually, is one of them, and there's 2 other ones, but I'm not right offhand. Now, so the chlorosis, which is this symptom, gives way to necrosis, which is just death after a certain period of time. And that's about 5 to 14 days. So longer before you see any kind of result. So Roundup on its own will take longer to work than your 3 ways or these other ones that you're used to, which you might see that afternoon some growth starting to get out of control. The only exception is if you add a product called Diquat to it, which is Roundup Quick Pro, if any of you are familiar with this one. All that means is I need it done tomorrow, and so there adds a burn down agent to it. And so that is possible if you need these things to work faster. They do have some combo products that do have it. So we'll go over some common ones that you'll see out in the yard right now. Their life cycle, and then we'll just kind of determine their susceptibility as we go. So this is a very common one. You all should probably see, or hopefully not see this in your yard about this time of year. So chickweed is a real common one. It's a winter annual, so that means it germinated last fall. So none of the pre-emergents that you put down now are going to do anything about it. So it'd be something you'd have to spray post-emergent now. Its leaves are opposite, which means just right down there they're apart from each other rather than alternate. And they have a little shiny appearance to them, almost kind of glossy. And they're found everywhere. They have a little bit of use and value, but it's not anything we really need to get into. Another one that's real common right now, we would see black medic or a true shamrock. That's the one that has this little yellow flower. Okay, there's another one that has a purple flower that looks very similar to it. But you can see because it has these really pronounced lines going in and out. And it's another, what I would call an annual. So it germinates sometimes in the fall, sometimes now, just kind of depending on when it goes. But it flowers April through November, kind of that time frame, and you'll notice it by that yellow flower, and it looks like a clover. Henbit, this is probably the award winner right now for the biggest pain. All the ag fields are painted purple. All the yards that nobody does anything have purple in them. They're extremely aggressive, and they germinated last winter, so they're sitting there in that October time frame. They just kind of germinate and sit, and then they wait. And then as soon as the spring temps, their goal is to be the first weed to get up and take the space before your grass even gets going. So you will see this everywhere. So what that tells us is we may consider spraying those in the fall, in that October time frame, to wipe them out if henbit is a real problem in your yard. So again, that's using the life cycle against itself. If you know it germinates in the fall and I don't want it in the spring, spray it in the fall, when it's little and easy to kill. Another one that causes a lot of problems is knotweed. This would be germinating right now, and you might even be tricked if some of you have seeded and be like, oh, I think that might be my baby grass coming up, but the leaves are just a little too fat. That's going to be this knotweed. And the way you can tell is it's got these little red knots or bumps kind of as it goes up, and it really grows in like impossible conditions. So if it in the middle of your driveway where you thought nothing could grow, you'd probably see some knotweed there. And it's really common to form almost in mats as it grows across. But it's found in waste areas, compacted areas, so usually that's also an indicator to you that your yard's not in good shape, because maybe that's the path where you walk out to the wood pile every time, or it's where your dogs go, or it's where you always traffic the same spot. It's an indication of compaction for you. So just something else to note. Speedwell is another one. It's got a blue flower, which is a little different in the plant kingdom. There's not a lot of things that have blue flowers. But again, it may look just like chickweed, but it's got a blue flower instead of a white flower. And the reason why I'm going over these fast is, as long as you have a general idea, they're all going to be, you're going to spray them the same way. So whether I found chickweed or I found speedwell, I'm going to use the same product, so it's not vitally important, just as long as you know that it's a broadleaf. And if they start giving you specific problems like this one can, then we may change our tactics a little bit. So this one looks very similar to that other one, but it has a purple flower instead of a yellow flower. And this is common Lespedeza. Where this comes from is we used to use it as a cover crop, so after wheat, the farmers would go plant in Lespedeza, and it would be this annual that would kind of come up, produce a little nitrogen, and then die at the first frost in the summertime, and so it's everywhere. I mean, we planted it from one side of the country to the other. And so when it gets in your yard, it takes advantage of when your yard's letting down in the summertime because it's hot and it's not so great. And then this guy says, I love hot, I like it great, and then it just comes right on when your yard goes downhill. And so this one is a little more challenging and may require a little different method of control, or a little more powerful herbicide. It's pretty resistant to 2,4-D and some other ones, so we may consider using something like Speed Zone or some other ones with it. Spurge looks like knotweed, also in compacted areas, but when you break it apart, it's got this milky sap in it. And that's really the easiest way to tell that it's spurge instead of knotweed, and it'll germinate later. But again, are you really concerned about it? You just know it's not where you want it and you want to control it. You're still going to use the same products to get rid of it. Another one with the milky sap, prickly lettuce. It has this really, really pronounced mid-vein down the center, which will help you ID it. And you'll notice when you mow, it does tolerate mowing okay. It can hang around for maybe even 2 years. It's a biennial. But again, you'll have this milky sap that'll help you identify it from maybe a thistle or something else that you'll see in there. This is the only noxious weed on the list, and this is field bindweed. And this is not something you want to let get away in your yard. When you see this, just pull out all the stops to get rid of it as fast as possible. Its seeds, I think, have been tested to germinate 50 years later. I mean, once it's there, it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it really is persistent. It has an extremely deep root system. As you can see, this is in one season crawling across a roadside. And just imagine what that can do in your yard, getting tangled up and everything and causing issues. But it does have these white flowers. Sometimes you can see a genetic variability with a little pink in them. I spent my internship spraying this stuff, and it's all there still. It's one of those things where you're just trying to keep it under control. But it is on the Kansas noxious weed list. You can go down to the weed department, and they will sell you chemistry or chemicals at cost to help you control it. So if you do happen to find this in your yard, you can go to the weed department and get a little help. And I would recommend that. They have some Speed Zone down there, that they can get you really reasonable if this is a big problem for you. Another one that I see in kind of some compacted areas, oftentimes in the sidewalks where people cut. So they'll walk down and then they're like, oh, I'm going to cut through. Just cut the corner a little bit. You'll see this common plantain. I also like to use it because it does have a little bit of history around here. The Native Americans used to use it as an anti-inflammatory or blood clotter. So it's just kind of neat. Helps sometimes because weeds get really boring. You sit there and it's the same thing over and over again. Something interesting about them can help you remember them without sitting there and getting bored on it. So yeah, I always think that's kind of interesting. And if you ever do get a bee sting or something like that, it really does help. You just kind of crush it up and bruise it, rub it on there, and it does keep it from swelling down a little bit. We talked a little bit about white clover. A lot of people, because it has this really strong influence later in the spring and then kind of goes away when it gets hot, you may think it's an annual, but it's not an annual. It really just kind of dies back to those central stolons and then really aggressively comes back. So when it's a perennial, there's really nothing you can do as far as like Lespedeza, where you have that ability to maybe use a pre-emergent or use a different herbicide right when it gets germinated. This guy will be here all year round, so you're just going to have to spray it in the fall. And another indicator with white clover specifically, because it does produce its own nitrogen, believe it or not, some people back east actually plant it in their yards as a companion plant. But if you want to get, what it can be an indicator for you is that your yard doesn't have enough nitrogen. So if you're seeing a plant that can make its own nitrogen, really succeed and really do well in your yard, it's usually because what you provide isn't enough or isn't adequate. So that may be an indicator for you to jack up that fertilizer a little bit in your fall application. Now if you don't know what this one is, we probably, most of us know a dandelion when you look at it. Most people don't think of them as being perennial. We only see them right now, when all the yellow comes up and they're just, boy, they reveal themselves and you see them from one end of the country to the other. But they sit there all year round and you just hardly notice them because they have these little, they're pretty low growing, they kind of blend into the yard, they're about the same color, and they just have this little basal rosette. They don't get too tall or too awkward. And they just kind of sit there and then they'll bolt one real quick time here in the spring and summer. But you can find them anywhere. And this is another one of those ones to help me remember, to make it interesting. We brought them here. It's another one of those ones that we introduced. And in the pioneer times, they used to seed them on the top of houses, actually, to make them stand out in the prairie. So you would walk along and, oh, there's a big yellow, somebody's house. And they would eat them, use them for a laxative or make wine with them. They did all kinds of stuff. So it was a really important crop or plant that came with us, and it just gets out of control. And most of our weeds are that. We had some purpose for them at one point in time. They escaped, and now they're everywhere. So when we get into controlling all of these broadleaves, and they are all broadleaves and not grasses, meaning that they have many growing points, not just one growing point below the surface or right at the surface of the soil. They grow at many points. And they have broadleaves rather than narrow leaves like grasses. So this is an example of a product. And most of them are susceptible to these 2,4-D based products. So somewhere in here, this first one, this big old long dichlorophenoxyacetic acid, we call that 2,4-D. That's a small name or a common name. Then you'll have another one, dimethylene salt of, anyway, big long word. That would be MCPA. And then we would have this dimethylene salt of dicamba. That was that other one we were talking about, that root absorbed one. And so these products really are copycatted, diluted, 20 different names for the exact same thing. They're very difficult for you as consumers to navigate because they come in so many different concentrations, so many different ways, means. For example, if I went over here and grabbed one off my shelf and I see this one, Trimec, okay? That's a great one. I like my Trimec. Then I have Trimec 889 right there. It's very easy to say, oh, well, they're the same thing. Well, a lot of people don't realize that this is 3 times more concentrated than this one. So they kind of water it down in the homeowner market. And that's our own fault because, as I mentioned before, we like to over-apply stuff. So they water it down for us so we can re-over-apply it. But you need to know that when you go to price things, you may see product over here that's 20 bucks and be like, well, I'm going to buy this one at $11.50. Why would I spend 20 bucks on it? Well, it does 3 times as much stuff. So in reality, this is your better buy. And so even though you may not understand the whole terminology within this active ingredient portion, you can at least compare it to other products that are right there on the shelf, so that way you can get kind of where you need to go. But again, some research down at K-State said it really didn't matter which of these you used, at what rate you used, as long as you were using them at the recommended rate, they all worked really well. So it didn't matter, 889, 992. Even the products like Speed Zone or Momentum, they all had about the same level of control 30 days after treatment. Now the difference is getting to that 30 days, this will get you here tomorrow, That's what Speed Zone can offer you and does it in cold weather. So these are specialty herbicides that I might recommend in a situation like now when it's cold and things just aren't working. This will burn it down tomorrow for you. I mean, it's really fast working broadleaf killer. Disadvantage is you have to pay for it. You know, it's about $30 versus your similar one at $20 there. So they are available. This one adds a chemical called tricoplur or floxapur. Adds actually both of them to the 2,4-D base one. Will help you with things like Lespedeza, where they get almost woody, really tough to kill annual weeds that are aggressive. You may see these specialty herbicides out there, and they have their place. But for most problems that you encounter, a standard 3-way herbicide is going to do most of your work for you most effectively. So with grasses, we went over crabgrass in detail last time. Just remember that it's got these real small wavy leaves and it's rolled in the bud. Same thing with green foxtail. It's going to be flat in the bud rather than rolled, and all that means is it's going to be at the base of the stem. It's not going to be round. It's going to be pancake flat, and that's the way to tell the difference between the two. But all these would be picked up with your pre-emergent herbicides. This one, if you did it in the fall. This is kind of a grass that you would see in early spring. You would mow, and the next day a seed head would be there. And then you would mow it, and the next day the seeds would be right back. And you go, how in the world does that plant do that? Annual bluegrass is just a very aggressive cedar, but it burns out when it gets hot. So you just see it early in the spring, you may not know what it is. There really isn't anything you can do once it's up because it is a grass. There's not much selectively you can do. But just know if you see something that's like that and it's right back, it'll be gone when it gets hot. There's an example of that pancake flat stem we were talking about. This is orchard grass. Again, that was that perennial grass that we talked about early. That's different from your annual grasses. So if you go out there and you think this is crabgrass, it's not. And you might have to have a different method of control for something like this. And it's another one of those common seed contaminants, the K31. So we went over grassy weed control in detail last time, so I'll just kind of skip over this part. But just know that you can use a post-emergent like these Trimet crabgrasses if you have a break-in control for the annual ones. Perennials are complicated. If you have orchard grass, or you have rough bluegrass, or bluegrass and fescue, or all that sort of thing, it becomes very difficult to selectively control one and the other. Another example, warm season grass, Bermuda. That's that brown spot that's in your yard that just stays brown, and then it gets really hot and blows up and grows everywhere, and then first frost it all goes brown again. Or you may have zoysia grass, which looks a little bit more like fescue, but it has that same duality where it's brown for most of the year and then really bright green, green during the summer. Windmill grass is a native one that can also be in that. They're all in the same category of perennial, warm season grasses that are difficult to kill. So how do we get rid of those? Really the only thing you can do is go with a non-selective one. That's why I put kills all up there. Kill everything in August with a 5% solution, which is very heavy. That's kind of double what we were talking about early. And you got to start over. That's going to be one of those things where you're going to renovate is your best method. Now for cool season, you don't have to get so crazy with the how heavy the solution needs to be. You can use a little lighter solution, but wait till fall. Wait till you can see it again and it's actively growing, and you can see pretty quickly thereafter. And that's the same reason, why are we waiting until August to kill these warm season grasses? It's because, okay, so you killed it, now what are you going to do? You're going to have a bare spot in your yard, and you can't put any cool season in there in the summer. So you might as well do it right before the transition, where you can go spray it, and then go right into a cool season yard where you can seed it, and then start over. So when you get into these perennial grasses, within your perennial grass, it's difficult. That may be a case where you just need to give me a call and say, hey, what do we get? Let's get a plan together. And then the other category. So all of you have probably seen yellow nutsedge. It's really can be annoying, and it looks like a grass. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it grows vertical. It looks like a grass, but it is not a grass. So you can't use your crabgrass killers or those sorts of things to kill it. The only thing that really sets it apart, I think, is probably the triangle stem. You know, you can just roll it right along and it's got 3 edges, you know, just a triangle stem really helps you identify it. But as we get to control it, just know that your control dramatically increases if you're able to apply it before June 21st. Okay, so before that longest day of the year, it has not yet set on the nutlets that are next year's crop or this perennial thing. So it reproduces by these little tubers underneath the soil, and if you can spray it before then, dramatically increases it. Increases your chance of controlling it. Excuse me. Sulfentrazone's a new one that's out there. That is a quick way to kill nut sedge versus the original one, which is this halosulfuron, which is like Manage or Sedge Hammer or Sedge Control. It's the one you get in the little packets everywhere that mix up a gallon and you go spray and nothing happens for like 15 days and you get really excited about it because it just is really, really slow. So if you want to use one that's a little faster acting, and the neat thing about this one also is it has some pre-emergent effects if you're using it at the high rates on the label. So you can actually suppress it, which is neat. You know, that's something new with that one.
Is that pretty gentle on the grass? Or, I mean,
it is not. You can if it's, especially most of the time I almost always recommend adding some kind of a spreader sticker or surfactant. That is one where you do not want to add a spreader sticker or surfactant. For some reason, they interact and they give your grass a sunburn, for lack of a better term. So you don't want to use those, and that's why I like to get it before that June 21st, before it gets too hot. So there is a little risk associated with the sulfentrazone ones that aren't associated with the halosulfuron ones like Sedge Hammer or high yield nut sedge control or something like that. So, okay, that's a lot of information to take in all at once. But what I want you to take away from this is just a real basic understanding that if you ID what you're wanting to control, your success rate's going to go up a lot. Okay, so if you're able to tell what you want to do, and then consider where it's growing. If it's in your lawn, you may treat it differently than if it's in a parking lot. So you just consider that. It may be real easy in a parking lot, but a little more complicated in a lawn or garden. And then just develop a plan to remove it. Whether that plan is, hey, I put my crabgrass preventer down and I saw one little thing of crabgrass, so I'm just going to go pick it out and mechanically remove it. Or if, hey, I'm going to commit to spending a little bit more money and I'm going to fertilize better in the fall so that I don't have these weeds in the spring. Just develop that plan to get out of there. And just remember, mechanical, cultural, and chemical are the 3 ways that you can affect how your yard looks as far as weed control. And I'm a really big proponent. I know we spent a lot of time on chemical control tonight, and I think that's just because it's so confusing for people to sort through all the different products and that kind of thing. But this cultural side, having proper watering, fertilization, and that sort of thing, is your key to a permanent or a sustainable way where you're not every year having to fight this problem. So with that, I just want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time. And if anybody have any specific questions about weeds, well, we've got it. Go ahead.
Question would be on the application.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're just doing spot spraying, you still go through the routine of marking off a 10 by 100 foot area.
What I would think is that at some point you've done that, and so you just understand that how I need to mix that spot spray.
Right.
So for me, that's about 2 ounces per gallon.
Okay.
Is what I end up putting down. I put down about a gallon per 1,000. So to me, that's what I have in my spot spray. And then it really isn't any different if I'm treating the whole thing or if I'm spot spraying. I do it the same thing. The only way you get into trouble is if your spot spraying is, I'm going to dump it here, and then I go and dump it there. You're putting a lot more chemical down because you're spending 2 or 3 seconds rather than a quick spray as you walk by. But what I like to do is just treat it always the same way. You're always going to just walk right over it rather than that sit and dump. That can get you into trouble.
When you say spot spray, people think spot.
Right, they think I'm going to treat a spot. In reality, you're just going to apply it as you normally would in some areas of the yard rather than the whole yard. And that's what I would consider a spot application. Go ahead.
If you're doing spot spraying with just a little hand sprayer, can you put too much on? I mean, you're mixing like 2 ounces a gallon or whatever.
Right. What ends up happening is if you overdo it, let's say you go and you buy this one, right, and you put it down at 4 ounces per gallon, which is that one's rate, or 4 ounces per thousand, I should say. So you've just put down, 3 times the amount of chemical that you're supposed to, and let's say you were angry at them that day and you held it down. What ends up happening is you'll see your entire yard stunt and have issues and start to yell, and you can kill grass with a high dose of it. So your grass is just resistant to it. It's not immune to it. It still obviously has an effect, and sometimes you'll even see with some grasses a yellowing or a kind of like a burn a little bit, and then it grows out of it in 3 or 4 days. So you just have to remember that your yard isn't immune to it. It's just less susceptible to it than your broadleafs are. So that's how you're getting that selection is. But if you do an over rate or a high rate, it just all becomes non-selective. You're just going to kill everything you run into. Right. Any other questions on weeds?
Well, if you're doing the spot, like where you're just spraying on top of the one, you're not preventing the movement or the seeding around the area.
Right.
So you kind of want to mark off the area and at least have a foot or so away from the rest of the weeds that you're spraying as well, so those seeds aren't going into the rest.
So his question was, if you're coming back and spot treating so that you can come back and seed, yeah, he's saying you want to make sure that you're just not, because basically, that's the best way to put it is, when it comes to seeding, most of these stay active in the soil for about 2 weeks. That's their half-life. If you double the rate, it's 4 weeks. If you triple the rate, it's, it just keeps on going up like that. So you have to just understand that there will be some residual using those broadleaf control products, and yes, you can overdo it.
I have a question on pre-emergence. What's the advantage or disadvantage of using dimension versus barricade?
Okay, so the question was dimension versus barricade, which is a better product. As far as crabgrass control, they're identical as far as their ability to control and how they work. As far as maybe picking up some other annual clovers like that Lespedeza, I would lean more towards the dimension product. Or, man, I'm late and I haven't. Dimension has that ability to kill crabgrass post-emergently in that 1 to 2 tiller stage. So Dimension has a little greater flexibility and has a little bit wider list of weeds controlled that aren't necessarily just crabgrass. But if we're comparing crabgrass to crabgrass, I don't. Yeah, so that's really the difference. But like right now, I would recommend Dimension because we're getting close to that time when it's possible for crabgrass to germinate. So if it does go ahead and germinate, you can go ahead and it still kills it at that high rate.
That nut grass. Here, last year or so, we got a box of it that's got like little pellets in it.
Right?
Is this better or same or what?
Faster.
Faster?
Yeah.
It don't hurt your other grass, so.
Correct.
And you just.
When it starts to get hot, or if you mix a spreader sticker with it, you can burn. But if you're in that June 21st window, it just works. What I like about it is tomorrow you can tell you did something. You don't have to wait 2 weeks and see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On these sprays, how long does, before rain? Rain on a hot sunny day or a cloudy day?
That's an excellent question. When you go through, you'll see, oftentimes on the label, you'll see something that says rain fast within an hour or something like that. Let's see if I have any on mine. Or you'll see, rain fast within 2 hours. What that means is they've added a surfactant to it, which are these spreader stickers. So these cut your time down usually to a couple hours before rain, and you're good. On its own or standard, usually I say 4 to 6 hours, you're still going to be fine. And if you remember, the other wonderful thing about Triamec, or these 3-way herbicides, is they have dicamba in them, which is that root-absorbed kind of catch-all. So it doesn't work until it gets into the root system and is rained in anyway. So that's kind of what I like about that, it's like a backup in case it does rain. You still have that dicamba there to be absorbed through the root system to help you. So most of them, especially using a surfactant, it's really hard. What you don't want to do is have the rain on the horizon and you're out there spraying trying to catch up. Okay, anything other than that, you're in pretty good shape with most of them. In Roundup or Eraser or something like this, any kind of generic Roundup almost always has a surfactant in it. So it doesn't work hardly at all without it. So the companies put it in there anyway. So that's why it's almost always rain fast. With our other ones, like this one's called End Run. This is one that has the surfactant added to it versus the Trimec 992. The chemistry is exactly the same percentages of everything in there. This one just is what we call a loaded product or a surfactant added product.
So you put 2 ounces per gallon of Trimedic or whatever.
Right.
How much is of that? The other product, the surfactant? Or
Now the surfactant is a true ounce per gallon product. So we are treating the water, we don't care how much coverage it makes. So this one would be, I want 1/3 of an ounce per gallon, and I don't really care, you know, how your rate is. I need that much per gallon. You know, and what that does is a surfactant is kind of a short term for surface acting agents. And all it does is it takes the tension out of the water and helps the herbicide penetrate the leaves of the plant, and it gets it inside the plant faster. And it also helps it stick to the plant because it's not, you know, if you think about a droplet of water and it hits your hand, it kind of rolls right off. With a surfactant added, it hits your hand and it just lays flat. There's no tension of the water to itself. There's no attraction to itself. So it sticks to everything, but it doesn't stick to itself.
And that was 1 ounce per gallon?
On a surfactant, it's basically it'd be like a pint per 100 gallons of water is how it'll be on the label. But that equates down to like 1/3 of an ounce per gallon. Pretty safe.
Can I add a cautionary tale to that as well?
Yes,
If
go
you're
right
gonna
ahead.
use surfactant, you darn sure make sure that you get the protective covering, because it will cause the absorption of those chemicals into your skin much faster.
Very
than if
good
not.
point. That's a very good point. Just like it helps penetrate the cells of the plant, it's going to help penetrate your cells as well. So when you're dealing with surfactants, you want to make sure that you're always using your proper PPE or protective equipment when you're dealing with it, especially in mixing those types of things. Now they're not unusual, but another example would be for those of you who have used like Dawn dish soap. You go and you wash, and you don't have those gloves on, your hands just dry and crack like that. There's surfactants in Dawn dish soap. That's part of why the breakdown happens in your hands so fast, you know. But think about that, but then you're adding, you know, chemicals and that sort of thing to it. It just, you know, think about how quick it penetrated and dried out your skin, and now you're adding chemicals to it. So good cautionary tale there, yes.
Have you ever heard of putting dish soap in with your chemicals?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people will use surfactant substitutes or products that already have surfactant in them. Where I usually come out with that, in order for it to be equatable, like for example, you would need like a cup of Dawn to equal a teaspoon of this. So there's surfactant in Dawn, but why wouldn't you just buy the surfactant rather than buying the Dawn and the surfactant? And then there's the other concern, if it's ionic, meaning it'll bond, it can really disrupt the chemistry of what you're trying to put on, which totally defeats the purpose. If you've taken, you know, half your chemical and turned it into something else because of the soap you added, well, that didn't get you anywhere. So it's easier just to, there are surfactants in soaps, and that is a way to reduce the, but you might as well just buy it straight. I mean, I think it's much less risky as far as screwing up what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Nut grass, how many ounces per gallon do you recommend on that?
Again, on the it's 2 ounces per 1,000 would be how they would do it. You know, going back to that ounces per 1,000 type thing. So if you're putting down a gallon per 1,000, which is what most people do with their spot sprayers, that'd be about what you'd use. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, guys? Go ahead.
Is there something better than Roundup for driveways? I mean, longer lasting than Roundup?
Okay, his question was, is there anything longer lasting than Roundup in driveways? And the answer to that is yes, and you would use a combo product. So Roundup's still probably the best for just non-selective, cheap control. But what they'll do is they'll add another product to it to give you a pre-emergent effect. So sometimes that product's like what you put on the yard barricade, or something like that, or it's usually it's a chemical called Imazapure or Imazuron, and that would be what you hear in the extended control. So Roundup extended control or this, those are another product added to Roundup that gives you a pre-emergent residue, and that can last anywhere from 3 months to a year depending on the product. It just kind of depends on what they use. So yes, you can find something like that. Go ahead.
I'm sure you're gonna give a class on seeding in the fall.
I might have that one in the works, yes. Yeah.
Is there any sense in me doing a lot right now? Because if I kill off all my dandelions and all this other stuff, I'm gonna have a bare yard. It's even gonna look worse than it is now.
That
At least
is-
it's pretty.
Yeah, if it truly
I get a lot
is a
farther than
50-50 mix, what I would call that, and there's just no room, you don't feel like your yard's gonna expand or anything like that. The only thing you're doing at this point is controlling the seed bank. So the only thing you're doing now is the reason why you would spray now is just so those don't go to seed and put, 750,000 problems in the future. So sometime you're just doing it for seed bank control. Yes, you're gonna create a gap. Yes, don't worry, something will come right back in there.
Yeah.
Shortly. Probably one of these summer annuals like the Lespedeza or those sorts of things will come next. But really it's just if you want to control the seed bank and keep it at bay, that's fine. If not, just wait till fall and we can address it then. Or remember how you feel now and spray it in the fall so next spring is clean. But seeding now, you're right on the edge of today would be like the last day I might recommend it. And it's just because we get to the point where you're not going to get a root system developed enough to survive the summer. It's just very difficult to get a spring seedling up, deep enough roots, hardy enough, and then deal with the Kansas summer, and then try to survive that. So it's just asking a lot of the seedling to do. It's not unheard of. It's better than bare dirt, of course. But just understand that your success rate's going to be less in the spring or even this time. But if I had like a brand new house or something, and I had bare dirt everywhere, there's no way I would let the dirt be bare. I mean, you're going to put something in there even if it all dies. You can't just let bare soil be there. So you just have to take that. Just understand that it's challenging and it's probably not going to be real successful. But the nice thing about this time of year is because we get all the rains, you usually get pretty good germination. So that's you just have to weigh that.
What about sod? Get little pieces of sod to do?
Perfectly fine with sod. Yeah, sod. Just as long as you don't treat it like a yard, meaning like put traffic on it and that sort of thing, and you allow those roots to go on in. It's already got all that food stored, in some of the tissue in the plant. All it needs to do is just get a root system down. Usually sod you can make work. Yeah. All right, any other questions?